Welcome to Faith Fiction and Folklore, or the Triad podcast, where we try our best not to F things up. And this time around, we're going to be getting into RFK claims about Fauci and, what was it?
Fauci has been accused. I'm trying to find a way to. I need to figure out a way to delicately word this.
Yeah, so I was thinking, I was like, wait.
Basically, Fauci was dealing with a lot of bodies en masse. People were expiring, and he was getting rid of the bodies in a nefarious way. I don't know if that will cover us with the algorithm or not, but that seems to be the case. RFK made this claim, and there's been some interesting commie cover-up stuff. I got an article by the AP that was a little funny to read, or not funny, but, indicative of the censorship and the way that they mask wording and stuff. So, but I thought we'd start by watching RFK's the segment of an interview of RFK. It's been very hard to find, apparently. Like, we tried to find the whole thing, and it's
been blocked and banned, and
it's getting harder and harder to find stuff, even under the Trump administration.
Tony Fauci made sure that none of those kids had guardians, which is illegal, and then he hid what he was doing from the boards. He took foster homes in 6 states, and he turned them over to the pharmaceutical industry. He made sure that the people who were running those foster homes did not even have medical training. Most of them were immigrants who came from the Dominican Republic. They knew nothing about medicine or responsibilities, and they were sickened when they realized slowly what they were involved in doing to these children, that they were torturing these children. And there's videos of these children, an old BBC documentary that will make you cry. I promise you cannot look at these without weeping. One of these kids, a 12-year-old who's trying to protect the 8-year-old, and he has a tube in his stomach. And he's telling them, I tried to fight them, and this is what they do if you fight them. You can't fight them. You need to just take the drugs. And the kids didn't want to take them because the drugs were making them horribly sick. And Celia Farber, who's this amazing researcher who worked on this chapter for me and did a lot of the original research on it, she actually went up to Hawthorne, New York, to the Gates of Heaven Cemetery. She found the cemetery where Fauci was disposing of the corpses of these children who died in his illegal experiments. She found an open pit. It was actually covered by an astroturf carpet. She opened the astroturf carpet, and she saw hundreds and hundreds of tiny little coffins stacked haphazardly upon each other, because these are children who have no parents, and nobody was there to protect them. And Tony Fauci treated them as collateral damage, and his objective was to enlarge the markets for these pharmaceutical companies who he had partnered with by allowing HIV, these toxic chemotherapy drugs, to be given to children. And then the next experiments, which are in the next chapter, which are equally horrendous, is his experiments on Africans.
All right, I don't know if Jones talks much horrifying. More. Yeah. So this is something that also came up at the beginning of the COOF, and it was kind of buried pretty quick, and so it's apparently come back around. And I mean, I don't see any real particular reason to not believe RFK on this. So anyway, just to take a break here, we might circle back to Alex Jones and what he has to say on the matter. We have 2 more items here. We might go back to Jones here in a minute, but I just first wanted to point out AP, people are running defense. So AP and their fact checkers did their little assessment, instead of fact check, change the wording around. So this is actually August 28, 2021, indicating, like I said, that this was brought up before, or this type of stuff. Yeah. So let's see here. The claim. Dr. Anthony Fauci funded experiments on orphans of AIDS, and 25 of them died. AP's assessment. Missing context.
Oh.
Well, if that wasn't a commie way to put that. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, which Fauci runs, did fund clinical trials evaluating HIV and AIDS treatments that enrolled HIV-positive children both in and out of foster care. But the report that found that 25 children in foster care died during trials did not find that the trials were the cause of their death. Well, what else would it have been? Good night. I guess we're supposed to believe that the disease itself killed them. Anyway. A claim spreading on social media is targeting Dr. Anthony Fauci by misrepresenting the findings of a 2009 report focused on New York City foster children who are HIV positive and participated in clinical trials related to the treatments for their condition. Let me just finish reading this. The website Unite America First published a headline. Dr. Faustian, that is a very good headline, funded experimenting with AIDS. Orphans, 25, died. Here's a question. Why were you testing on kids?
I think it reads Dr. Falkenstein.
Faustenstein? Maybe that's what it was. Faustian would have been good too. Either way, it's all fine. Yeah, but here's the question. Why were they... Why? Why even test on foster kids and orphans?
Because that's who they could take off the streets and
Yeah,
just do it.
And it's because they had no parents who would have to give consent. And obviously the kids aren't going to consent. So it's like, yeah, he did, do these trials with these kids. But we don't know that the trials killed them. Oh, why was he doing it on foster children who were wards of the state? Because they have no rights. That's why. He could kill them and nothing would happen. That's why. They couldn't consent to the trial because they were too young, nor did they have parents that could consent for them. That's why. But we're going to omit that detail and just focus in on the fact that, we don't know empirically that the vaccine did it. We don't know. These people are sick, Trevor.
No, they're beyond sick. They simply do not care.
Yeah. This guy was able to get away with it for years. It blows me away. Like I never even heard of this guy before COVID.
Right? And good Lord forbid, whenever people would bring this subject up, they would instantly be like shut down. Like YouTube channels and other channels. And during COVID, if they brought Anthony Fauci's history up, they were automatically shut up and shut down.
Yeah. Which is why it's getting talked about on a YouTube channel called Faith, Fiction, and Folklore, instead of being on the national news and there being a giant trial about it. Anyway, all right.
I can't believe he's still around, Fauci.
This guy should have went to jail years ago. Years ago. This is insane. It's insane that he's allowed to walk. Anyway, so here's I haven't watched this, but I was hoping to get more details on the story because I felt the RFK thing was a little insufficient. So we're going to see.
Yeah, it was a little short, but
we're going to see.
It was enough.
Yeah, it gave you the gist of it. We're going to see if there's more details on this, and then we'll circle back to Alex Jones. But we first got to go through the stupid ads.
Crypto.
Love the thrill of hitting it big?
No.
About 10 years ago, we launched the first and most widely used stable coin, enabling over...
The corpses of thousands of children killed by Dr. Anthony Fauci in illegal medical experiments have been uncovered in Hawthorne, New York, bolstering the case to have the former NIH director charged with crimes against humanity and crimes against children. In the same way that Nazi Dr. Joseph Mengelé's crimes horrified the world when his atrocities were exposed after World War II, the scope and reach of Fauci's horrific experiments on animals and children are leaving investigators stunned. Why isn't this front page news in every newspaper in the country? Where is the mainstream media? The short answer is the mainstream media is hard at work covering up the crimes of the globalist elite, including the depraved crimes of Dr. Anthony Fauci. Before we dive in, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and join the People's Voice Locals community to support the channel and gain access to uncensored content. Dr. Fauci is a psychopath who has pushed science into the realm of sadism.
That reminds me, I don't know if we're going to get through all this, but this is on Rumble, obviously. And the YouTube channel is called The People's Voice, if you're interested in that. The title of the video is, you can see it mostly on the screen. Mass graves of thousands of children killed by Fauci in illegal extermination experiments found in NYC. So with that, we'll go on. I don't know why it's not just letting us play it.
Freedom of Information documents obtained in January 2021 by the White Coat Waste Project show that Dr. Anthony Fauci approved a $424,000 NIA grant in 2020 for experiments in which healthy puppies were tortured, enclosed in cages with their vocal cords removed, where sand fleas slowly ate them alive. Why were their vocal cords removed? So that the researchers could continue to torture the puppies over the course of 196 days without the annoyance of incessant barking.
If Dr. Anthony Fauci thought Rand Paul was mad at him, wait until the animal activists see this.
Oh, but Fox News will talk about the dogs.
Let's skip right over the kids.
Yeah, let's skip over the kids, but, the puppies are cute, so we'll worry about them instead of them dad-blame foster kids. We don't like to talk about foster care anyway, so let's just move on from that.
New report shows that under Fauci's direction, the National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Disease funded painful and deadly experiments on dogs to the tune of more than $400,000. According to the White Coat Waste Project, researchers using
taxpayer dollars to torture puppies. Such is the man's supreme arrogance, Fauci did not deign to reply. Perhaps he thought the issue was of little consequence, because Fauci hasn't just tortured and experimented on dogs. He's also tortured and experimented on humans, including children. And there is a mass grave in New York that bears witness to his crimes. After this quick break, we will expose the full extent of Fauci's crimes against children and explain why the mainstream media cannot be allowed to brush his crimes under the carpet. But first, an important message from our sponsor. The globalist elite want us to...
Okay, we're going to go ahead and watch the ad because Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers makes a point. If you're going to borrow people's content, you need to watch their advertisers. It's only fair. I'm like, all right, well,
it is fair.
We'll watch their advertisement.
Be financially unstable, so we rely on them for everything. And now they're making their move. Right now in Biden's America, inflation is so high that the Federal Reserve is talking about raising interest rates further, which will completely tank the economy. But this is all part of their agenda. The only people who aren't afraid of the coming financial collapse are those who are investing in gold. The problem is the price of gold is near an all-time high already. That's why I recommend a company that trades at multi-year lows called Gold Mining Inc., trading on the New York Stock Exchange under GLDG. Their gold resources are the cheapest around. If you go to the link below this video, there's an entire presentation explaining how this company is almost 90% more discounted than any other gold company out there. If you're interested in financial stability, I urge you to download this exclusive report today. In 1992, under the direction of Dr. Fauci, the NIA funded drug trials on supposedly HIV-positive children. I say supposedly because we know that many of the children were not actually infected with HIV. These children, many of whom were orphans, tested positive via faulty, or some say rigged, PCR tests.
What? You mean they rigged PCR tests? That's a thing. Wow, I had no idea. Yeah, it's almost like this little guy. It's almost like Fauci's done this before. Huh. Wow. Interesting. Rigged PCRs? Weird.
Administered through New York's Child Welfare Department, who then handed the children over to Dr. Fauci, no questions asked, for the deadly experiments. Damningly, many of the drugs Fauci was testing on the children were already known to cause deformities, organ failure, brain damage, and other lethal side effects. And yet, the innocent children were required to continue with Fauci's depraved experimentation, regardless of the negative side effects. In 2004, a British documentary entitled Guinea Pig Kids exposed the savage barbarity of Dr. Fauci's science projects. The nurses administering the drugs were lied to by Dr. Fauci, who explicitly told them that all the adverse side effects they witnessed in the children were being caused by the HIV infection and not the drugs.
At the time, it did not occur to me that anything was wrong, because we were told by the doctors that these were all steps that were going to happen, to be expected, because they were all HIV positive.
Jacqueline Hoorger is a pediatric nurse who worked at Incarnation for 5 years.
If they were vomiting, if they lost their ability to walk, if they were having diarrhea, if they were dying, then all of this was because of their HIV infection, and to be expected, and that we were doing the best we could to save them from that.
Jacqueline was completely unaware that she was party to experiments on children.
It didn't come as my first thought at all to question the medication, and since I had worked with pediatric AIDS for many years and had given the medication, I just faithfully gave it as I was told by the doctors.
When parents refused to consent to these barbaric trials, the
Sorry, Trevor. What?
Could you imagine that?
No, I can't.
You believe you're a healthcare provider trying to help children, and the whole time you're being lied to about what's actually going on.
Yeah.
And then you find out years later that you were actually part of this. I mean, those people alone are going to need therapy for that.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
It
Not
is.
to mention the kids themselves.
Mm-hmm. But how does stuff like that happen? Because people get into the habit of going, don't trust your lying eyes. Trust us. Trust the experts. Trust the science. These appeals to authority are what create this crap. If people would just stop listening to these PhDs, institutions, and actually evaluate arguments for their own sake, you wouldn't get crap like this. But you're not logical. You're not smart. You're just a nurse. You're just a pleb. But we academic, we elite, we know. And this isn't caused by the vaccine. This is caused by, whatever, by the disease. We know, though, because we're the experts. Trust the experts. Trust the institution. You need to trust your systems, Trevor. But people are smart, and people can evaluate the stuff, and if people would trust their own intuitions rather than listening to these idiots, you wouldn't get stuff like this.
And ask a question or two.
Yeah, and ask a question or two. All right, moving on.
Administration for Children's Services took their kids and placed them with foster families or children's homes, where continued participation in the trial would be assured. Fauci was hell-bent on seeing this depraved experiment through to its bitter end. He simply would not be thwarted. When the children resisted his deadly drugs, they were brought to Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, where plastic tubes were surgically inserted into their stomachs, and the deadly drugs they were trying to escape from were pumped directly into their small bodies.
My friend Jolisa, she never, ever liked to take her medicine. So they used to hold her down, force it down her throat. I tell her, would you like this?
This boy spent most of his life at Incarnation. Age 15, after years on drug tests, he has the physique of a 10-year-old. He didn't want to show his face, but he did want to tell the story of what happened to him in the home.
I did not want to take the medications, and I did not want to, do all that stuff.
But they insisted.
Yeah, if you want to get out of there, you have to do what they say, or else you're not going anywhere.
His medical records, which we've obtained, prove that he was enrolled in drug trials while living at Incarnation. If a child refused to take the medicine, a peg tube was inserted directly into the stomach, something he warned his friends about.
And I used to tell her every single day, please take your medicine. Don't want a tube in your stomach. And she didn't listen to me. That's what she got. And my friend Daniel, he didn't like to take his medicine either. And he got a tube in his stomach.
When the children died of the deadly drugs, their bodies were simply tossed into a large unmarked grave in Hawthorne, New York. A large pit with astroturf thrown over it.
You would not expect too many parents to volunteer their loved children for such experiments. This means that if the researchers want to do the experiment on children, they're going to look for vulnerable children whom they can get. And when you have city government agency accommodating them, that is the biggest betrayal of those children. They don't have anyone but the city agency that is their guardian on paper, but not in human ways.
For over 10 years, Vera Shirav has battled almost single-handedly with the New York authorities to come clean over the use of children in drug trials.
Why is that even a thing?
It should not be a thing.
How does that even get to a place where that's a thing? Like, how do you even get here? Like, I mean, obviously they're using the foster kids because the kids can't consent and they don't feel like they need to give them any rights.
Yeah.
You know, this is why rights are inalienable. They're not just like citizen rights, they're human rights, because people find these stupid kind of loopholes in the law unless you assume that a right is inalienable. Those kids deserve to have a choice as to whether or not to go through something like that. And then if they don't want to anymore, they should have the right to stop. But because people make these stupid nuances between whether or not you're technically a citizen or whatever, people find ways to skirt around the law to do stuff like this. And then people who follow the letter of the law and don't understand the spirit of it, they'll go along with crap like that.
Yeah.
They'll sit there and go, well, technically they're not citizens, so I guess you do have the right to stick a tube in their stomach by force, like it's something out of Minority. Yeah, by force, like it's something out of Minority Report or some stupid dystopian novel. I mean, they'll say it's okay because you found a technicality.
Missing context.
But trust the experts. Trust the experts, Trevor. You're just a pleb. You're just a dumb pleb. Trust the guy with the initials behind his name.
Like MD?
Yeah.
These very highly experimental
or CIA.
phase 1 and phase 2. Why?
Or CIA.
Didn't they provide the children with the current best treatment? That's the question that we have. Why did they expose them to risk and pain when they were helpless?
You know why? Because it made him feel like God.
Yeah.
That's it. Made him feel powerful. Made him feel tough. That's why.
Would they have done those experiments to their own children? I doubt it.
Years later, Vera Shirav, who spent years investigating all of this, told Robert F. Kennedy Jr. that Fauci just brushed all of the...
About 10 years ago, we launched the first
hang
and
on.
most widely used stable coin, enabling
those dead babies under the rug. There were collateral damage in his career ambitions. She said that at least 80 children died from Fauci's drug torture chamber in the Manhattan foster home alone. A BBC investigative journalist said in the documentary that I found the mass graves at Gate of Heaven Cemetery in Hawthorne, New York. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was a very large pit with astroturf thrown over it. Under it, one could see dozens of plain wooden coffins. There may have been 100 of them.
In a mass grave owned by the Roman Catholic Church close to Manhattan, over 1,000 children's bodies, including some who were enrolled in the trials, lie beneath a tarpaulin. Officially, their deaths are recorded only as resulting from natural causes. For months, we tried to get answers from those behind the trials. From Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, where many of the tests were devised. From Incarnation Children's Center, from the Catholic.
And this gets into NGOs. Like, they're hiding behind religious institutions because they can get that government funding and that nonprofit status. So we talk about the CIA joking and stuff. Well, projects like this get funded and the money gets shifted around through NGOs, like these 501c3 types things, like these religious organizations.
And that's where things get even more dark.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. Do we want to finish this, or do we want to go see what Jones's thoughts are?
Let's go see what Alex Jones has to say.
All right. And then we will wrap it up. We're about done here.
In the late 1990s, I interviewed the investigative journalist, and I'm going to get her back on, who found the mass grave in New York full of dead black children murdered by Anthony Fauci. Do you hear what I just said? He doesn't just have the larynxes of hundreds of beagles removed and then put their heads in mesh cages with flesh-eating flies and maggots. No. That's just to make sure his researchers are evil and will do whatever he's telling them. He does this all over the world. He does it to children in India and in Nigeria and in South Africa and in Mexico and Brazil and over 120 other countries. He has been Joseph Mengele 2.0, the angel of death. He, under Obama's orders, created COVID-19 at Chapel Hill, North Carolina, moved it to Peter Daszak, Eagle Health Alliance in Wuhan for cover. Had the so-called vaccine already on the shelf, that's all come out 2 years before, and rolled it out. They would block doctors in the U.S. around the world. Famous movie, Dallas Buyers Club, is based on a true story, who were giving people that had HIV real drugs that were curing them, and they knew it. Instead of boosting the immune system, they gave people drugs that killed their immune system. What does the HIV spike protein do? It turns off and kills your T lymphocytes, the white blood cells that command the other white blood cells. What does the new mRNA shot do? Mass produces the spike protein, but the way it's released, it turns off the white blood cells, doesn't kill them, but has the same effect. That's all on record. So he runs the same play over and over again. I'm going to tell you this again and play RFK Jr., the HHS head, talking about it. And it's in his book, The Real Dr. Anthony Fauci, that they premeditatedly, and it's not hundreds like the New York Times says, it was thousands in the U.S. alone. They mainly targeted blacks. They would go into a single mother with 2 or 3 children, and in court documents that came out, even the New York Times, in the early 2000s, finally reported on it, and say, well, you got a 3-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 12-year-old. And we say we've tested them and they have HIV. Most of the time it wasn't even true. How are they getting it? Children. And we're going to take them to a secret research facility, and if you don't sign these papers, we're going to take them all.
Can we just pause on that line there? Because I think that's actually quite important. How did they get HIV? They were kids. So how exactly did that happen?
Made up a story. Well, maybe the mom or the dad.
Yeah, I'm sure they came up with a story, but that would be an exceedingly rare thing at best.
To genetically pass it down.
Yeah, I don't think they can genetically pass it down, but yeah, I mean the odds of them finding that many, like what'd they say, 80 in one foster care?
I think they said in his own personal.
Like there was a Manhattan branch of whatever it was wherever that was they were taking the kids from. 80 in one institution. That's not going to happen. Yeah. Obviously, they were lying.
And it was happening all over the world.
Yeah. Obviously, they were claiming that these kids had AIDS when they didn't. And if somebody had been paying attention, they would have done that. And yet, even when all this stuff came out, we just watched a documentary about this stuff. Nobody investigated? Nothing came of it back then? Kind of makes you wonder if we deserved COVID.
Maybe.
And, here's a question for Bongino and Cash. Why should I trust the FBI if they weren't going to do anything about this? Oh, but we're going to focus on cocaine in the White House. That's an affront. That's offensive. You know who thinks like that? An institutionalist. Somebody who thinks that our government is something sacred. Who cares? I expect politicians to act like idiots and be blackmailed because they're acting like idiots. That's not surprising to me. This is the kind of stuff the FBI should be investigating, but nothing.
No, that's what they were created for, wasn't it?
Well, stuff like on this par, you would think. Like big league crime, something like this. Instead, this gets covered up. And yet, we're supposed to trust our institutions.
Yeah.
All right.
Well.
I'm done. I'm done. So, we're going to go on to episode 3. If you are on the live stream, stay with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if you're watching this after the fact, guys, thank you so much for watching. And
thank you for watching.
We'll see you on the next one.